Okay, so I've been getting antsy about getting to work on this thing. This is my '89 C4 Corvette. The only thing I've done so far is build a tool that shows you how to open the hood when the cables are broke, because my cables were stretched out. That's drawn a little bit of interest. So what I figured I'd do here first is give you some thoughts on modifying these, and some things maybe you didn't think about, maybe you're not aware of. First of all, one thing you want to do if you get one of these old beauties, if it's going to be outside, get you a good cover. Now, this one's got a cover, but it's kind of worn out. As you can tell, it sat out for quite a while without having a cover on it. So, however you look at the sides are in beautiful condition. Only the issues are only the tops and the hood. So, cosmetics. Anyway, the other things you want to do is, when you get something like this, is do yourself a favor, get you an owner's manual. Easily available on the internet, brand new condition. That'll tell you how this thing operates, all the goodies and how things work is maybe a little different. The second thing is get you a factory service manual. This is all the goodies. At the time, will tell you how to do pretty much everything. This is what the service techs would use. '89. I'm trying to think when the internet came out, so this may have actually predated the internet. So get the real deal. This is genuine GM. The other thing you should do, I highly recommend, is going to the National Corvette Museum. And I had these, ordered these in a laminated form. You get your window sticker, and even more important is your build sheet, because that'll give you all the actual details on how your car was made. So the beauty of this is, besides just cool information on, you know, what the price was of your car when it was originally delivered, it gives you pretty much all your standard equipment. So no matter what they tell you, you know, this tells you had blue leather bucket seats. It no longer has those. I actually know the reason why. It gives you all the equipment, how much it all costs, your VIN numbers down there, the dealer it was delivered to. The other piece of information would be cool would be if you had the original invoice where they sold this to the original owner. That would be kind of hard to get a hold of, though. Anyway, then you come with the build sheet, which tells you all kinds of goodies. Gives you all the codes. The date on this one, I guess this is a birthday. I believe that's the 167th week of 1989, and the time 7:40 when they printed this. I don't know if that has to do with when it was completed or what the deal is, but then it gives you all the accessories. In this case, I thought it was interesting. FE1 soft ride suspension, which I got to tell you, I'll get into a little bit. I don't mind that at all. I'm in my 60s now, so race cars are not something I want to be driving around in too much. Anyway, so I'm going to ramble for a little bit and discuss some of the things that you should or shouldn't do. As you can tell, this is a fabric interior. The second owner, the one I bought it from, pulled the leather seats because they're a pain in the butt, and had these new upholstered seats. And as you can see, this is what are we now, February 2021, and I've got beautiful upholstery on the seats. The rest of it's kind of, yeah, you see all the seals are gone. Anyway, so getting more pertinent, a little bit of history on why I'm going to tell you some of the things I'm telling you is my modification history started somewhere around in the early 70s, I guess. No, it would have been mid-late 60s. First one would have been bicycles. So somewhere, either because of the movie Easy Rider, where they used chopper in there, or for some reason we had a little 20-inch Stingray bikes, which are the generic name, had a coaster brake, no front brakes. So we thought it'd be cool to make choppers. So I took a pair of legs off a barbecue grill, took a hammer to them, flattened down both ends, flattened one so that it would fit over the forks. When I took the front wheel off, beat them up onto there, flattened the other end, drilled holes in them, attached the front tire onto the front wheel on the front of those spokes, and rode that around. I don't think it lasted very long. I distinctly remember going over a curb, pulling a wheelie. When I came back down, they just folded right over and broke. No structural strength to the cheap little thin-walled aluminum forks. They weren't designed for that. Next would have been little dirt bikes. I had friends, one had an 80 Yamaha Enduro, another with a Honda 70 off-road bike, which battery ignition, which seemed bizarre to me. You'd have a battery on an off-road bike. And then a little Suzuki Trailhopper 50 or 70 or whatever it was. It may have been an 80 too. I don't remember. Anyway, the modifications for that were basically limited to putting an expansion chamber on it, which today you'd say that'd be like the exhaust system, like the muffler, like putting headers on a car. No problems there. They were designed for it. Didn't really affect anything. Then I moved into boats in the early 70s. We ended up with these little 8-foot hydroplanes. We ran around, going from running around little motorcycles like you would do if you lived in the country. We rode around our little 8-foot hydroplanes in the intercoastal around Indian Rocks. And the only modification I did to mine was to pull the little exhaust plate on the exhaust housing going down to the propeller where the exhaust went out, and made it very, very loud. They already would basically ride like this. They'd go brr, 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 and drive all the neighbors crazy, and were loud. And with the exhaust plate off of there, it was really obnoxious. Really ticked off all the neighbors around there. And I could only take it for a few weeks, I think, until I had to put it back in because it was too noisy even for me. Then moving into cars. Oh wait, back in the, well, I missed one of the most important things here. A few years later, one of our friends, somebody I knew, was fortunate enough to buy a Mercury racing outboard motor, and decided that he wanted to make it even faster, so he did some modification of the reed valves or something of that nature and promptly blew the motor up. I don't remember all the details, but that's basically in a nutshell the idea when he took a factory racing motor and tried to modify it using his thoughts on what he should do, and trashed it. Next, into automotive, I ended up with a 61 Volkswagen Microbus, getting ready to go to aviation school. First I wanted a van, then I wanted an airplane motor. And the little Volkswagens, despite the fact that Volkswagen spent millions of dollars developing and engineering these little motors, there are myriad of modifications to give you more power, and I ended up doing that on mine, putting a cylinder kit on it, larger dual port heads, a cam, 2-barrel carburetor, and a little extractor header system, which doubled the horsepower. In that case, I had no problems. I ran 100,000 miles. No problems whatsoever. Brings us to the modifying your car, your Corvette. I'm going to talk about this one, the L98. I'm just beginning my experience with this. However, just ran that little background to tell you a few things about them, why I feel the way I do. So, the hot ticket when you're buying cars, I bought a 67 Camaro when I was a kid. It was about $700, somewhere around 1976 or something like that. What I really wanted was a Z28. I couldn't afford a Z28. There were several grand. So what I got was a bone stock Camaro with a 327, 2 barrels, 210 horsepower at a 2-speed power glide, indestructible transmission, and air conditioning, power steering, power brakes. It was immaculate. I should have basically left it the way it was because it was great, but it's not what I wanted. Promptly took a hammer to the air conditioning system, pulled the compressor, beat out all the other stuff, put headers on it, messed up my power steering. Decided I didn't care because it drove like a truck, but I figured that was a passive theft prevention system. The brakes on that thing, if you were going anything less than 20 miles an hour and you weren't really used to it, you touched the brakes, you would slam on the brakes and bounce your head off the steering wheel. They were really tricky. But between that and the steering it like a truck, if somebody wanted to steal it, they would think twice about it because they wouldn't be able to drive it. Wouldn't be able to steer it. So I left it that way. Ended up putting a turbo 400 in it, transmission, headers, the whole cam. a dual plane aluminum intake, Y factory Corvette, not Corvette, Z28 I believe it was, an intake manifold, which I should have kept. 4-barrel Harley, big old 4-barrel Harley, a 780 I think it was. You know, flex fan, all that kind of stuff. Big fat tires and wheels. It had enough power that unfortunately didn't have posi, so it would get into some serious wheel hop. Would have needed to put posi and some traction bars, and never got around to that. Ended up selling that when I went to school. Got the bus. Anyhow, the point of all that is, the hot ticket when buying these, people want to go, oh yeah, I want a ZR1, the 6-speed, absolutely agree with that. But the Z51 suspension package, I want a race car for the street. Back in the 70s, it was like, oh yeah, I want a race car for the street. I had a mild cam in mind. I loved the lopiness. I want to get back to the lopiness. I love the lopey idles. Just, to me, it just sounds so sweet. But we have people who would want to modify them up to basically a race car. But we got to think about having a race car. Race cars are designed for one thing: high RPM, short track. You put high gear ratios in them. So you put 410, 411 rears in them. They're very quick, very fast. But even in their stock form, back in them days in the 70s, had a friend had a 65 Chevy Impala grocery gritter, just happened to have a 396 in it, and we would run out to Sunshine Speedway. And as I recall, it wasn't during the regular track hours. I think we did it at night. Just drove out there when there's nobody around. How we got away with that, I don't remember. But he would make one pass in that Impala and watch his gas gauge drop by a quarter tank. It probably had a 20-gallon tank in it, so it was burning about 5 gallons in one quarter-ounce pass. It had a big 4-barrel on it, and whatever the horsepower that is. So compromises. The faster you make something, the less gas mileage you get, the less reliable you get. These things are designed to last a long time by the fact. So my point being there is, yeah, Z51 handling package is great. However, if you've ever known somebody who had one of these high performance cars, not just Corvette, Porsches or something, that had the track packs on them and they were over the age of 25, they would probably tell you, yeah, it's great, you can drive them every once in a while, but they're going to beat you to hell because they're designed for a track. The suspension's stiff. You got to watch out what you drive over. They're slow low to the ground. You break the splitters. They're loud. They get lousy gas mileage. I knew a doctor and a vet who had a GT, I guess it was a GT3, GT2, I can't remember. He said it was so loud. His wife wouldn't ride it. So hard riding, so loud. He had to sell that one and get a little more civilized version to drive in. This thing already, in case you're not familiar or you're looking to get one or whatever, you're looking at, I think I measured 4 inches. This car is about 4 inches off the ground. This is in stock form. So it's something you need to take into consideration if you're going to add anything to the front of that. Lowering one of these really isn't much practical because you're going to be sitting your butt on the ground. Something to just keep in mind, I'd much prefer have a 6-speed just because sports cars should have automatics in them, but this was too good a deal to go. So as far as modifications go, one definitely absolute is to put a K&N air filter in here. But I've seen some kind of cold air pack where they put they have a duct that goes up here, and it's like, I think they run the filter over here or something. I think there is one that goes all the way back into the front, but one of the most popular ones, I've taken this loose. Here's my Royal K&N filter, but these are permanent. So once I clean this up and re-oil it, best thing you could ever do, buy a K&N air filter. It breathes better, and of course, better gas mileage, more power, yada yada yada. And this is the factory air box. Now I've seen them where people like to cut these open, and they say, oh, big wider area, more airflow. Well, not really. Chevrolet spent $1 zillion developing these things. I don't know if you see those slots that are all angled up in there. This thing sits right down in the front, where of course the hood is now over the front of it, so it's blocking the airflow. But right down in the front, this is a cold air system already, and that directs the air up into the air filter. I don't see any reason why I monkey with that. Once you start cutting these things up, it's like blasphemy. There's another modification on right in here. There's a little aluminum splitter that goes in there. I guess I haven't looked at this one. I've seen them on YouTube. That modification, I'd have to admit, I'd probably do, because it makes a smoother entry into your throttle body. There is the Frisbee modification, where you pull this balance plate off of here. Originally they were going, oh, we'll take all the extra weight off of there. Well, that was put there for a reason. If it's dynamics balancing of the crankshaft or whatever, that can't weigh but a couple of pounds. I really wouldn't mess with that. That's an engineering issue. I don't exactly know where the water lines are. There's some coolant lines that run, probably that one, to the throttle body to warm this thing up in cold climates. Everybody seems to want to bypass that. I gotta admit, that one I would consider, because I'm in Florida, and cool air is what you want, and plus you're getting cool air in there. These runners, suppose these runners are like 2 feet long. I haven't looked at them yet, but they go from, for instance, this feeds the far cylinder and they cross over. So these are tuned runners. If I take this apart, I will probably look at the castings and make sure that they're all nice and smooth inside, no rough edges, because they are mass produced. So there are little details like that which should be worth doing. The tires are already, it's $1,000 worth of tires. These things are already massive. Can't imagine you'd really need to do much other than put, track rated tires if you're going to take it to the track. I would like to run this thing at Sebring and see how it goes. But this car handily will exceed 150 miles per hour. There used to be horsepower back in the day. Horsepower is everything. Nobody really got into talking about torque that much, but of course torque is what counts. So this Corvette, you would seemingly think, oh, it only has a pathetic 245 horsepower, but this engine produces 330 foot-pounds of torque. So back in the day, a big block, something like a 396, you'd have to have something like that to produce this kind of torque. I don't know exact numbers. I will look that up one of these days. But so the bang for the buck out of this engine is just incredible. This is an L98 with a tune port injection. It has some other fancy little things. I think it's got some hydraulic cam followers or something like that. I'm sorry, I don't know all the details yet. This is my first foray. However, basically, this is just a quick basic. My thoughts before I even get into this thing. The interior, this car got a lot of work to do. Like I said, I'm glad I have a good interior in it. But so far, that's about it. I'm gonna get it on the road. The next thing, of course, is to put some cables in it. That'll be the next video on this thing. And I'm gonna have to find out what it takes to get rid of all that. But basically, just you need to think about what you're gonna do with your car. If you want to drive it every day, you're gonna take it to a track, all bets are off. If it's gonna be a track monster, then you just go crazy and do whatever. Spend as much money as you got and what you want. Of course, then you'd really want a 6-speed in it, which I've been told it's really easy to put a 6-speed in one of these. All the brackets are supposedly in there. This one, I'm gonna not do that. I'm gonna resurrect it back the way it is before I start doing any modifications on it and get it back running. And if I really want something sporty, then I'll try to find a ZR1. This was not built that way, so like I said, I'm getting on the older side, so soft ride suspension sounds good to me. I'm not exactly sure the differences. That's just shocks and how things are tuned up in here and anywhere. Anyway, that's about it. I just wanted to throw that in there, throw my little 2 cents, whether it's worth anything or not. Like I said, the best thing you can do is get a good cover if it's outside, put a K&N air filter in it, keep it tuned up, and keep them on the road, because these babies are an American classic. Oh, and there's always something I forget. I always have to come in the back. And so the basic idea of this whole thing was, every modification you do to these, if you make them quicker, faster, or whatever, generally will have a tendency to cut down the reliability on them. They were designed to last a long time at the factory. You start mucking around with them, you just have to keep in mind that you're not going to get the same numbers that you want to do. There's nothing free. The more horsepower you get, there's no such thing as getting more power, greater fuel economy. You know, it doesn't work that way. You get more horsepower by more fuel consumption. You can make it a little more efficient if you're gonna drive, you know, 78 miles per hour, which is basically the top end where you cannot be harassed by the cops. They usually won't bother you at 10%. You make some modifications and you drive 78 miles an hour and your RPMs have now dropped 200 or 300 RPM, then you can get some gains at it. But what most people do is more horsepower, make it faster, so you end up burning up all your modifications. Little related ideas from the aviation industry. Modifying airplanes, they had to go through a big certification process, so that any modification done to the airplane had to be proven not to take away from the original design of the airplane. They did nothing about telling you that yes, you get what you pay for. Therefore, any of the modifications in the airplane were quite expensive. Some of them worked, some of them didn't. But if you were to ask somebody who just spent $20,000 on their modifications if it made it faster, more efficient, whatever, the tendency was to say, oh yes, absolutely, because you didn't want to admit that you just spent all that money for nothing. So that's the other thing, depending on what you want to do, how much money you want to spend. Nice set of headers would be good. May look into that. But if you really want to make improvements, you got to do it all around. They have chips for these. You can modify your computer chip, and they're fairly cheap, I believe. But you'd want to put better exhaust. Then you may want to put another cam in it. Maybe retune your throttle body, or put bigger fuel injectors or whatever. So you can just go crazy, or you can just leave it the way it is, and it's already incredibly fast. Will handle great. So I'll do some more info on that, but that was my point as well, is that just because you throw money at it does not mean it's going to be better or faster. It might be faster. You might be able to convert it into something that you can't even drive daily. So think it all in, keep all that in mind before you start going nuts. There's a lot of modifications for these things, and a lot of purists hate what this has done. This has got a Greenwood conversion with the ground effects. So I'd be curious to have this on the track versus another one and see how it does, because these modifications actually may work at 100 miles an hour, but who knows. Alright, that's it. I'm going to quit gabbing.